Brad gets spun out with like 25 to go, something like that, and gets a little bit of damage on the front end of his car. And this is the first year he's driving the Miller Lite car. And he's like, well, I'm not sure, but we're both at the back of the pack at that point. I got a pit road penalty because one of my guys ran over the wall without a helmet on, of all things. So we're both in the back, and he's like, you know what? Brian's back here. Let's push him, see how it goes. And all of a sudden, we're like a rocket ship.
Generally speaking, what does he want in the race car?
Speed.
No, of course. Goes without saying.
Fast car.
Does he want a loose race car?
It turns the middle great and has great drive off. And
Welcome to Backstretch Banter, where we talk all things RFK every week right here. My name is Brad Gillie, and for Chris Childers, we have Mike Massaro back at the RFK headquarters there in Concord, North Carolina. And a big show after coming off the weekend at Dover Motor Speedway as we head into the Brickyard, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Two guests will join us this week, which is very exciting. Scott Graves, the crew chief for Chris Buescher, and the number 17 Ford Mustang Dark Horse. He'll be with us 30 minutes from now. Joining us right now, Brian Keselowski, brother of Brad Keselowski, and a very accomplished racer, team owner, and all kinds of other things motorsports in his own right. Gentlemen, welcome. Mike, I hope you're doing well, sir.
I'm doing great, Brad. Good to see you. Great to sit next to Brian and catch up on all things RFK and his involvement that has been ongoing this year.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's talk about the weekend for RFK. It ended very well for both Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski. Buescher ended up with a 9th place finish, Brad Keselowski 10th. I actually think a little bit of a rain delay and running the last 14 laps was a huge help. Maybe not quite for Ryan Preece after getting caught up into something through no fault of his own, but still an exciting weekend. Mike, how do you break this down?
I think you hit it right on the head there, Brad. Those last 14 laps were worth the wait for the 17 and the 6. Gained several positions, got top 10 finishes out of it, but yeah, too bad for Ryan. It didn't work out so well. Got a little bit of damage there and probably hurt his overall finish on the day for sure. But at the same time, we're glad to have a couple of cars in the top 10.
Yeah, it was really cool to see how everything went down. Brian, what do you think when you think about just the weekend that was at Dover and maybe RFK specific, and then outside of that, just the racing in general?
Dover's a pretty tough place, right? So I've been there as a driver a few times myself. It's one of those places that it can be hard to get a handle on, and it looked to be that early on in the race, most of the RFK group was that low teens, early 20s kind of position, and just kind of struggling along there for a while. But obviously the red flag later in the race helped out a lot because they could be able to pit, put tires on, and get themselves in a different position than everybody else in front of them was. So that worked out really well in their favor. Obviously it didn't work out for Ryan because he got caught up in a mess, but things happen, and sometimes you just got to take advantage of the cards given to you.
Yeah, and that's the way it goes. This is the greatest thing about it. I always say, look, what we do here in NASCAR is not a fastest car contest. It's a race, and there are a lot of different things that can contribute and go into all of that. You spent some time spotting this year for Brad. What was that like for you? A couple of brothers out there racing.
A few years ago, I would have said that probably would have never happened, right? But it's been a couple years now. TJ had run into some medical issues a couple years ago, and then again this year. And I got my first chance to spot for Brad, which was an interesting thing. I think it was Vegas was the first time, and it actually went really well, and I enjoyed it. A couple, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 months later, TJ was out for a couple weeks again, and that worked out pretty well. We had a couple top 10 finishes and good runs, and I've been spotting off and on for quite a while now. I did a little stint with Stuart Haas and a couple other race teams, and that actually went really well, and that kind of got me some opportunities from there. Unfortunately, I haven't had anything full-time yet, which I would look into doing if the right offer was there, right? But in the meantime, I did the 60 a few times last year, and that went really well. Daytona went very good. I think we were running maybe top 5, top 10 all the way right to the very end, right? So I enjoyed doing it. I did a couple races with Chris Buescher last year too, and even spotted for Priest on the late model level a little bit. So I've been around a little bit everywhere on that. It's kind of runs in the family too. My mom was a spotter a long time ago, but so it kind of runs in the family. Both everybody does a little bit of everything, and that's kind of where I'm at with it too.
Man, so much to unpack there. I really want to follow up on the part about your mom spotting.
Yeah.
But first off, I want to go back to replacing TJ. Now, TJ, obviously a veteran spotter, been up on top of the spotter stand for many, many years, working with Brad. He has a system, right? He has a system. He has a style. How much did you have to kind of adjust your style to kind of blend with that and give Brad what he's used to having?
A small amount, but not really much, right? Everybody's kind of their own individual when it comes to spotting, and each driver likes their own way of doing things too, right? So TJ's just different than me. That's all there is to it. He likes to talk, and he likes to be able to put a lot of information out there. I, as more of a driver, felt like, other than the pertinent information, if we're out there running kind of in our own time zone, I'm not going to say a whole lot, because that's, as a driver, I wouldn't have wanted that either, right? So sometimes I feel like maybe I don't give as much information as I should at certain times, and that's just kind of a learning factor. Each driver is going to want it a little different, although I feel like Brad's enjoyed where we've been with it. So everybody just kind of has their own style. TJ's obviously been around a long time and feels like he can really help with a lot of different information that maybe I'm not as up on as he is. So like I said, everybody has their own way of doing things, and each driver likes their own style of doing things too. So
what was your mom's way of doing things?
More kind of like I was, right? So my dad taught her from the beginning on that he didn't want somebody just sitting there jabbering at him. Obviously, important information, things like that, cars high, low, whatever it be. But outside of that, you're really not going to get a lot of information. And she was taught that way from the get-go.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, we talk about new driver-spotter relationships and getting that communication. Is there anything inherent in the fact that you guys are brothers that just sort of made that natural, or did y'all have to sit down and kind of have some meetings of, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I might be giving back and forth, so on?
There was a small amount of that, but a very small amount, right? I mean, I think when we decided that, okay, Brian can come over and take over for a few races here and there, it was mostly just show up to the motorhome, talk about it for 10, 15 minutes, and off we go, right? So I feel like Brad probably knows that I'm going to keep him in a safe position myself. Do everything I can. I won't make calls that are going to be too close. And sometimes that hurts you with different situations. You're trying to make blocks when, they're going to be pretty dangerous blocks. I probably won't call that block for him, where some other guys might earlier. And that's fine. But I feel like he knows that's kind of where I'm going to go with things, so that helps a lot. Some of that's just being around each other for 40 years now, so and kind of knowing what kind of situations that we would put each other in.
One thing I always find interesting when it comes to spotters is spotting at a road course, and I think, Brad, you can probably relate. Both of us have been in radio, so we know how the turn reporters interact in calling a race in radio, throwing it from one turn to the next. Essentially, that's what you guys are doing, too, as spotters at a road course.
Sure.
What's that like?
It's probably not much different than it would be in the radio, honestly. Each spotter previous to the race weekend, we'll kind of get a location and say, all right, this is where we're going to go. I'm going to be turn 15. I'll be turn 1. This guy be turn 9, like we were at Mexico, right? And each one will just kind of hand off as you say, all right, the guy's going to be middle way down the straightaway. I'm going to hand him off to the turn 1 spotter, and he takes over from there. And then usually pre-race or sometimes in practice, we'll kind of work together on the second radio and say, all right, this is where I'm going to hand him off. You're going to take over from this position all the way through these next set of corners, right? So it really isn't going to be a whole lot different than maybe the radio broadcast would be.
No, maybe that's your next gig.
Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah. It's always interesting though. To Mike's point about that. Look, a lot of times, especially as you're getting used to it, you might be standing like, up on the roof at Charlotte Motor Speedway, for example, and all of a sudden the cars are like door to door going through turn 4, and then things start to sort of separate. Maybe one gets the edge on the other and so on and so forth. But the angle, which is constantly changing that you're looking at the cars, sometimes makes that difficult. So How do you manage that? And having driven, does that help you with that?
I feel like, yes, having driven that helps with some of that, because you get kind of an ebb and flow of, when a guy gets a run on another guy, about how far you're going to get and if he's going to clear or not. Plus, you have to know the drivers that you're racing around. Some, no matter what, are just going to stick it in there and not going to give you that position, right? So you kind of got to know who you're racing with and who you're dealing with. But some of these tracks are extremely difficult. Pocono was one of them. Going into turn 1 at Pocono on a restart, trying to call clear in that is almost impossible, because they're driving straight away from you, splitting to 3, 4, 5 wide. It's really extremely hard to call that. Once you get a few laps into it, it's not so bad. Super speedway spotting is very similar-ish, right? So you have to look through binoculars and have to train yourself kind of how to be able to understand the runs that each other would get. And again, the different drivers will do different things too. So it's kind of, there's a lot of trust factor. The driver's got to really trust the fact that if you're calling clear, it's really clear, right? So luckily they do have some tools now in the car themselves with the different mirrors, especially the rear view camera, that they can kind of help that. But it's still a lot of trust factor in that spotter.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, just watching all of that and the way it goes down. How about you? What's going on in your world? It's not like you're not racing in some form.
No, I stay busy. I always stay busy. But I'm working in the Trans Am series on TA2 cars. That's kind of my weekly job. And then I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. Enjoying doing that. I've worked with the Toyota development crew on that with some of their drivers. And, been a little bit of a mix of everybody, but excuse me. In the last couple of years, had a lot of different drivers like Gio Ruggiero and Brent Cruz through my cars. Some guys that you may not have heard of. Tyler Gonzalez, he's more of an IMSA guy. Really good drivers, though, and really impressed with what some of these guys have done. Just kind of progressing through trying to understand how to road course race. Our series is a very interesting series. We don't have pit stops. We do straight 100-mile races. So you kind of got to understand how to save the tires early on in the races and how to get through, and make speed the entire time. So it's a very interesting series to be a part of. Recently, my driver coach has actually run the last couple races for me and done really well. And, we have a lot of data. We have probably just about as much data as a Cup car does on them. So it helps a lot of the younger drivers. Brent Cruz come up through our stuff and won a championship with us. So it's a very neat series to be a part of. I enjoy doing it and, kind of progressing through that. Then I'm also working on a historic truck. That was one of my dad's team's old trucks. So kind of in the meantime, after I get done working on one, I'm off working on another. I don't get a lot of time off, but that's okay. I don't like it that way. So I would rather not sit at home too often, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm getting a chance to work on something that I worked on 25 years ago and maybe kind of redesigning some of that stuff too. And hopefully we'll be able to see that come to fruition here in a couple weeks.
What's the story behind this historic truck? I understand you owned it for a little while and then you didn't, and now you do again.
So the race team built it brand new in 2000 for Dennis Setzer to drive. Mm-hmm. And so it was never a truck that my dad himself drove. But when we had the number 1 Mopar truck, it was a truck for him. Built it brand new. The chassis is actually dated from 99. It actually was built in December of 99. So it's a turn of the century truck, right? So it's actually a pretty neat truck. It was previous to when Jeff Bodine had his big wreck. Mm-hmm. So that's actually something this was probably the 6th or 7th race of the year that year. So they started putting what they call Bodine bars in the trucks, where there's extra support bars and everything to try to keep people from leaping tires like what happened to him. So this was a truck that actually had to be retrofitted at the time. So when we started tearing it apart, we kind of like, oh yeah, we had to come back and do this, But when we got the truck, it was actually in North Dakota. So if you know any Mopar people, there's a lot of crazy Mopar people out there that just absolutely love them. This guy was one of them. Okay. He bought it from us back in 2006, and along with a couple other things. And this truck it's basically, for the lack of a better word, sat at a junkyard. It was in a building in a junkyard for almost 20 years. And the guy had put a street motor in it and just kind of messed around and just there it sat. And his son contacted me about 2-3 years ago and said, hey, Dad's having some health issues and we're looking to sell this stuff. And at the time, I really didn't have anywhere to go with it, so I kind of just let it go. And Brad actually showed up after the Watkins Glen race last year and got interest in it through this HSR program. So Historic Sports Car Racing has a NASCAR Classics division that they're running. And that division is going to come to some of the NASCAR races. They'll be at the Roval. They'll be at Watkins Glen. And then they have some separate races that they do on their own, like Road Atlanta, places like that. And they can get 25 to 40 cars. I mean, they get from all sorts of eras, right? So it can be a Cup car from 5 years ago, or it could be a truck from 20 years ago, Cup car from the 70s. I mean, it's everything, all sorts of different kinds of vehicles. So it's something that Brad got some interest in, and the Trans Am Series runs with a division that runs these kind of vehicles. So I had a very small knowledge of it, and as I've progressed through there, Joe Nemechek is really big into this. So he actually probably supports somewhere around 6 to 8 cars a weekend when they go run. So there's a lot of NASCAR people, like former NASCAR, mechanics and drivers and stuff that are involved in it. And it's something that's just supposed to be fun. Of course, as you go, it's supposed to be fun. You're not racing for money. You're racing for little plastic trophies and, having a good time. But as more and more money gets into it, I'm sure that'll change and some rules will change. Right now, the rules are very open. It's about a sheet of paper about that big, right? And it's just supposed to be fun and interesting. And the biggest thing they want to have is period correct paint schemes, right? So trying to make them look period correct. So that's what we did with some help of decal guys. We put all the period correct decals back on it. We actually bought a model off of like eBay or something from 2000 and recreated all the decals off the model, off of like a Revol model on that. So it's been a very interesting build. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's a great story, by the way. Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, we have a lot more to talk about for sure. Brian Keselowski, our guest, Scott Graves, is going to join us here in just a little bit. And Backstretch Banter will continue right after this. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter. Brad Gillie sitting in for Chris Childers this week, along with Mike Massaro from RFK and Brian Keselowski. We're headed to Indy this weekend, which is a pretty major one. But, of course, our biggest race, that would be the Daytona 500. And, Brian, you and Brad made some really cool memories of the Daytona 500. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but I guess it was, back in 2011 when you were able to race your way in?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like 14 years ago, does it? Yeah, that was a very interesting situation, how that all kind of went down. I mean, I could probably talk for 20 minutes about it, but the long and short of it is about midway through the race, Brad got spun out. And
the qualifying race.
In the qualifying race, yeah. So obviously, with the Daytona 500, back then it was a little different way of getting into the race. The top 2 finishers of the qualifying races locked themselves into the 500, right? So going into that race, I probably didn't give myself much of a chance. I know I didn't give myself much of a chance. I was ready to go home, right? So I'm like, all right, we had a pretty slow car, but it drove really well. And at the time, they were doing the tandem drafting, and I had never tandem drafted in my life. And I'm like, well, we can get hooked up with somebody. We'll figure it out. Well, lo and behold, we got hooked up with Stephen Wallace, of all people. Right? I'm like, all right, I'm not sure how this is going to go. He actually did a great job. Through the mid portion of that race, he pushed me along. And I think nobody would work with him, so nobody would work with me either. So we just worked together, and it ended up working out, right? But Brad gets spun out with like 25 to go, something like that, and gets a little bit of damage on the front end of his car. And this is the first year he's driving the Miller Lite car. And he's like, well, I'm not sure, but we're both at the back of the pack at that point. I got a pit road penalty because one of my guys ran over the wall without a helmet on, of all things. So we're both in the back, and he's like, you know what? Brian's back here. Let's push him, see how it goes. And all of a sudden, we're like a rocket ship. And it moved through the field so fast. And the biggest thing my car drove really well. And I could put it anywhere I wanted to go. And a lot of guys couldn't do that, right? A lot of the cars were doing that reverse crab walking. They had different skew to the cars, especially in that era of the car, trying to get all the speed they could. Well, I couldn't afford that rear end. So my car drove nice and straight. It was slow, but it drove nice and straight. Well, with that car hooked up to its rear bumper, that thing was fast. And, I mean, the runs that you would get and the way that things would go, I mean, we almost took the lead at one point. And, it worked out really well. We got all the way to the end. There was a couple cautions where it kind of split us up. And, I come back and talk to Brad about that. And he's like, there was times I'm like, hey, if I need to do something different, instead of just pushing Brian, whatever I got to do, we'll do it. And even Roger Penske got on radio, said, this is what got us here. Let's stay with it, So that went really well. Obviously the 500 didn't go as good. We got wrecked like 30 laps into the race, but by then I didn't care. It was all golden after that, right? But, my financial situation as a team owner leading into that was extremely tough. I was really struggled along. Actually, guy that passed away here just a little bit ago, Travis Carter, I was working in his shops, and he was great to help me get through the tough times. But when I got all said and done with this whole situation, everybody got the bills paid back, and I was back to zero again, and I couldn't have been happier, right? So, but I had a really tough time in 2010 leading into that, and the car I bought for $5,000. I mean, nobody would believe me at this point, but I went to Evernham's and bought it for $5,000 as they were doing that switch over to Gillette, and they're just like wanted to get rid of a bunch of cars, and I bought the car. I bought the motor from Ernie Elliott 2 years before then. Tried to make the 500 with Mike Wallace and didn't make that race. That's the only motor I had available, so I put it in and off I went. And it, I don't know how we made the race, but we made the race. Yeah, it was very cool because I didn't even have hotel rooms for that night. Like, I had nowhere to stay. There was 3 people that helped us the entire weekend. It was me, my dad, my Uncle Ron, and my PR girl, Jen. And that was it. I did have a truck driver. I will say that. I had a truck driver. He at least got it there. But that was it for the whole weekend.
$5,000 for a Cup car in the Daytona 500. You can't even buy a used car that you could run through the streets of Charlotte right now for $5,000. And Brad, you remember it was an amazing story then. It still is an amazing story now. Brian, I think you'll be telling this story for quite some time. How are you able to afford tires for the race?
Well, I didn't. So if you look back, there was a whole funny situation where they just paved Daytona. And NASCAR actually made me come and do the tire test, which was a very odd thing for me. I had tried to make a few races the year before, went to Texas and a couple different tracks with a Cup car and didn't make the races, just didn't have enough money to really put an effort into it. And I had run Xfinity leading up to that quite a bit at Daytona and Talladega, but NASCAR still was going to make me go through approval processes of getting into that race. And I was really surprised at it. So I came down and did the tire test in, I think, December of that year. And in that tire test, nobody tandem drafted. Everybody just regular, ran. And Brett Bodine come up to me and said, listen, I don't care what you got to do. Just make the car go fast enough to stay with the group and run all day long and try not to hit anything. Of course, what happens? We all got in a wreck. But, in the end, we drafted all day long for 2 straight days and got a chance to understand where we were. So when we came back, I bought 1 set of tires, and I ran that same set of tires, practice, qualifying, the entire 150. And when I got done, it almost didn't look like you did anything to those tires because the track was such a nice paved job. And that's still where they're at with it. Leading before then, Daytona was one of the roughest tracks you would go to. After that 2011 paved job, they did a great job, and that place has been smooth ever since. So, but I got through that, and then Ray Evernham come over after he heard that it was one of his old cars, still had Evernham Motorsports on it, and he bought all my tires for that weekend.
Wow.
So, which was really funny because I didn't really need that many sets, but and turned out I didn't hardly need any because we got wrecked. But so yeah, there was a lot of things that kind of went. Roger Penske came to us with the discount tire sponsorship for the race. They even wanted to try to put an engine in the car. The engine wasn't going to work. I might as well try to put a Ford or a Toyota in that Dodge. It was never going to work. But so the whole situation was it was different, but it was really neat to be a part of.
Man, that is so story. Cool. We saw a lot of the story from the outside. To hear the inside, especially Ray buying the tires, is great. You mentioned your dad, Bob. You come from a family of racers. It's really not just your dad. You also talked about your mother earlier and her spotting and different things like that. What are some of the things that you and Brad picked up growing up from them, or they directly taught you that you still think about today?
There's a lot, and I've always said right from my dad's work ethic. I mean, to the day he died, he wanted to be at the race shop. So literally the day he died, he wanted to be at the race shop. But we're just racers. We've been racers. His dad was a racer. My uncle, my dad, my brother, me, even my sisters have been involved in it. We're just racers, and that's all we really care to do and want to do, right? So if there's a race somewhere that we can put a race car together, we're going. And Dad, all the way up until he got sick enough to where he couldn't do it, he was still driving land speed cars. 70 years old. He's got cancer with stuff hooked to him, and he's still getting in and out of race cars and cutting interiors out and redoing it. I mean, that's how he was, right? And that's my uncle right now. He just had surgery a week ago, Monday, and 2 days later, he's driving down to North Carolina to come help me put my historic truck together. So it's no different than where me and Brad are. We just, Brad might not get in and work on the race cars like we would have been 20 years ago, because that's just not where he's at with things right now. But he's still involved in it. He still shows up and gets on. It surprised crap out of me. He got up underneath that historic truck the other day, and I was like, I don't think I've seen you on the ground underneath the race car.
Are you telling me that Brad? Are you telling me that Brad doesn't turn many wrenches?
Probably not as much
saying?
As maybe the rest of the family. At least more recently. I think he's probably okay. He's got guys for that for right now.
He does. He's got three race teams he owns.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, look, Brian, we can't wait to see the historic truck on the track, and these are trucks that we remember. And with Dennis Setzer driving them, I mean, that Mopar truck was pretty awesome. And looking forward to that. What a great time talking to you. Definitely want to do this again, because I feel like we could be here for a good 2 or 3 hours, just swapping stories and everything. But a lot of interesting things. Thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate
Thank you,
it,
Brian.
Awesome. Brian Keselowski here on Backstretch Banter. When we come back, the crew chief for the number 17 with driver Chris Buescher, Scott Graves, will join us right after this. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter, where we talk all things RFK. Brad Gillie sitting in for Chris Childers, Mike Massaro with RFK, and now we are joined by the crew chief of the number 17 Ford Mustang Dark Horse, driven by Chris Buescher. Scott Graves is with us now. Scott, welcome. How you doing this week?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. All right, first, before we talk about Indy, and we got to talk a lot about Indy because this is going to be an awesome one. Let's talk about Dover. It was. I hate to just use where it felt like a mediocre day throughout a lot of it. Then all of a sudden, bam, we restart this race with 14 laps to go, and all of a sudden, you guys kind of rocket to the front, didn't you?
Yeah. It was for sure. It was. I'd call it mediocre. Yeah, it was a struggle for a lot of the day. I think our 3 cars were like nose to tail for a lot of the race, but unfortunately it was like nose to tail for, I don't know, from 16th to 20th kind of thing. So yeah, not great from that standpoint, but obviously you're able to work on it, throughout the day. Not having practice, obviously, I mean, same boat for everybody, but our cars were all very similar, but all off by just kind of the same amount. So get to work on it throughout the race, and then you get that scenario at the end of the race where, some guys, chose to stay out. We were able to take 2 tires. Some guys take 4, so it just worked out in our favor. I mean, restarts were such a big part of the race. And for a lot of the race early on, it seemed like our lane kept getting stacked up and, on every restart, and we lose 1 or 2. And it's just really hard to overcome that once you get going on a green flag run there. Just the passing was so hard. But towards the end there, that the last couple, they worked out for us. Chris was able to get some really good restarts. So it kind of, luckily it flipped for us. All the bad ones we got early on, he was really able to take advantage of the tires and what we were able to do there at the end, and work his way into it and salvage top 10 on the day.
I think when the red flag came out, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there were 14 regulation laps remaining. But it was about an hour and a half or so delay. Is that accurate?
Yep.
How much were you able to use that time to kind of get together with Chris and come up with a game plan on how you were going to use those closing laps to pick up spots?
We did. I mean, we mainly to talk about all right, what do we want to do? Do we, our scenarios are stay out, or we can take 2 tires, or we can take 4 tires, and we were just trying to figure out what was going to work best for us in our situation. We knew staying out, we're going to be the last car on the old tires, and that's never really a good position to be in. You're going to have tires of some sort right behind you, new tires. So that's a bad one. We felt like 4 tires. Well, that's probably not going to get us anywhere. We're just, we're just going to come out at the back end of everybody. So we're like, well, I mean, 2 is at least gives us a shot. Usually it's the right side tires that wear the most or give up the most grip. So we felt like in that situation, at least give them a chance to be on offense somewhat, try to catch a few people on pit road, and see what he can do from there. And that's luckily it worked out. So, I mean, that's really what we talked about, like what's going to be best for us in that situation and how to play it out.
Mm-hmm.
So early in the race, and on our PRN broadcast, Heather DeBow was our pit reporter covering your section of pit road. It was pretty early on. It felt like my memory. It was only about 30 or 40 laps, and she gives a report that Chris's cool suit had stopped working on not just a hot day, but a hot, humid day, which really compounds it. So what can you tell us about that? And I mean, literally the questions come up a lot this week, like, why do we always hear about cool suit failures? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one is they're so popular now. I mean, I think everybody wears one now. Where a few years ago maybe it was split, but I think pretty much everyone's using it now. Yeah, I mean they're finicky a little bit. Like if you get air in the system, they tend to lock up. Electrical issues, things like that. I mean they're not bulletproof by any means. So there's lots of little things. We honestly don't know, like with ours, it just needed to be reset. He ran 390 laps without it. When he got back in after the red flag, they checked everything out, fired it up, and it worked.
Of course.
So yeah, it just needed to be like, it's like the old, have you tried just turning it off and turning it back on? We needed to basically cut the power to it and refire it, and it actually worked. But yeah, I was pretty worried. He came across the radio early and said, "Hey, my cool shirt's not working." And I've got images of, a lot of other drivers this year that have had cool suits or cool shirts fail. I mean, they're in bad shape after the race. And yeah, Dover was hot, and it's a physically demanding track. Nothing easy about it. So it's I was pretty worried, but I guess we found out Chris is a pretty tough guy.
Yeah.
He was when he got out of the car at the red flag, he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." We're like, "Are you sure?"
That's completely accurate, by the way, Brad, because we had medics at the car ready to attend to Chris if he needed it at the red flag, and he just waved them off because he felt like he could persevere and get to the finish. Just a total gutsy effort. That's the way I looked at it. I mean, a 9th place finish, to me, it felt like a 3rd place finish because of what he went through, just how much he had to battle through the adversity throughout the course of the day. We mentioned the 14 laps that were remaining in regulation and the hour-and-a-half break that you had there. Not only did it allow you to put together a strategy for the closing laps, but it also gave him time to recuperate, so that had to help too.
Yeah, absolutely. He was up on the box with us. Obviously got to drink lots of fluids, things like that, and just and cool off a little bit. So, that all certainly helped.
Yeah. How much do you learn now walking away from Dover? I know we don't go there until next year, and you guys were on a tire that's only run at Dover, but it's still one of the 36 races on the schedule, and I'm sure you added a lot to your notebook.
Yeah, it's unfortunately we didn't learn the things we wanted to. We had struggled with really similar issues last year, so we actually all three of us had changed our setups quite a bit from what we had there last year, thinking that we were going to be able to address it, and unfortunately had a lot of the same issues there. So I guess we for the notebook found things that didn't affect any of the problems we were having, which it helps you at least narrow things down, narrow the scope down, and what to work on next. There's some similarities. We've had similar, I guess I would say, some similar issues at the concrete tracks this year. Bristol is a different, a much shorter track, obviously, but we had some similar handling issues there. And even to extent, Nashville, not as bad, but we had some of it there as well. So, seems to be something that, like I say, we need to work on in those style of tracks and try to figure that part out to get better there. You look at the overall picture of the tracks we've been to this year. Especially like the month of June, we had a ton of speed at the Michigans, the Poconos, places like that. So I feel good about where we're at overall, but there are certainly some areas we need to work on here.
Yeah, for sure. But and that's the way it goes. You're always trying to find more speed and always trying to do a lot of things. So you walk away from Dover Motor Speedway still above the cut line. Right now you're at plus 44 to a teammate, which is almost one of those tough rubs right there a little bit. But we're coming to some tracks that you guys have had success. Still a couple of them left in the regular season. You guys have won, which is good as well. But what's the outlook here for the next 5 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, really just focusing on, like we do every week, but just to bring our best stuff. Definitely looking forward to Indy. Feel like we have a lot to prove there from last year. We had a flat left rear early in the first stage that kind of set us behind the whole race, and really didn't get to show what we had there. But, I feel like last year we had speed at Indy very similar to like what we had at Pocono this year, and we just didn't really get to show it throughout the race. So, hopefully we can bring that back here this weekend to Indy. I was one that we got to work on from last year. wasn't one of our highlights. So it's one thing that we need to have some better speed for that one. But then you've got Watkins Glen, you've got Richmond, Daytona, 3 tracks that we've won at in the last few years. So it feel good for sure about Watkins Glen. I mean, Chris on the road courses is you got a lot of confidence going into a road course with him that we're going to have a good day. So feel good about it. I know there's the ones that we got highlighted that we've got to do some work on, and then there's some that we feel like we've got a really good chance at.
As Brad just mentioned, still above the cut line, still in playoff contention here, but do you still feel like you need that win to just kind of to take the pressure off?
Oh yeah, I mean it's I don't know, it feels very similar to last year. I mean we were 11th or so in points. Felt like we were doing really well, but then you get a couple surprise winners, and before you know it, you're in a bad spot. So it's the only guarantee in this system, the way it's set up now. I mean, consistency doesn't matter. It's if you can get a win, then you're in. So they've shown that. We know those are the rules. It was explained to us very clearly last year when we didn't make it. So that's it's been our mindset all along. Is like we got to get a win, and we're pushing for it. We've been really close. I say some of the races in June, we were really close. So I know the potential's there. Just gotta get it across the line.
Yeah, no question about that. Scott Graves, Chief Chris Buescher, is joining us here on Backstretch Banter. We'll come back. We'll talk about Indy. I want to talk about the relationship with you and Chris. Y'all have had a lot of success together here over the last several years, which has been a lot of fun to watch as well. We'll do that and more when we come back. Welcome back to Backstretch Banter, where we talk all things RFK. This weekend, we head to the Brickyard, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, for the Brickyard 400. Second year back on the oval. Scott Graves, crew chief for Chris Buescher, is joining Mike Massaro and myself here today as we look forward to a big win. So, Scott, we were just talking in the break. Let's talk about the way the race car looks. First of all, with the Kroger sponsorship, it's brought a lot of great brands to your car, something which the 17 team has had a lot of fun with. Diet Cherry Coke this weekend. How good does that car look?
It looks good. I like it. It's got a great paint scheme to it. I think like I say, it's going to look good on track for sure.
Very retro. And, Brad, I'm sure you can relate. We can remember when Cherry Coke came out, how much of a hit it was. I was a little younger. I wasn't drinking Diet at the time, but I have gravitated to Diet since. So I'm looking forward to having some free samples on pit road.
That's right.
I'm sure they'll be there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
I think we're all going to.
I like that. This is pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about the Brickyard. As we mentioned, we spent 3 years running on the road course, and which for you guys, the road course would probably be just fine as well with all the success you've had. But back on the oval, I think that's where everyone wants to be. So what do you look for this weekend, and how varying can the strategies be, especially when it comes to short pitting or staying out for stage points and all of the other things?
Yeah, definitely got to take all that into consideration, because it's one that can be, a lot like Pocono, where you can flip the stages. You make the choices for if you're going for the race win or stage win type thing. So definitely gonna have to look at all those options as we go. It makes it difficult when you have to make some of those choices. But then again, Pocono worked out for us. Just the flow of the race with cautions, we were actually able to get both. So that'd be the ideal case. Get something like that. But it's definitely. I feel like I'm saying this every week to to the team. I mean, it's definitely a track position kind of race, and you want to set yourself up to be able to capitalize that you get in the third stage. You want to be in the lead and be able to set yourself up, obviously, for that final run.
From a performance standpoint, are there tracks that have preceded this race that help you glean some information and perhaps build some confidence heading into this race?
For sure, like Pocono is one that I think you hear people a lot of times say that there's some similarities there. Turn 2 in Pocono is very similar to the corners at Indy, so that definitely gives us some confidence as well as we ran there. Even Michigan to some extent. Just the way we run on the similar style big tracks, not a ton of fall off, to lap times. Feel like say we've got some confidence just based on performance of those two tracks here recently.
So you get to take advantage of something that you don't get to every weekend, and that's actually a real practice session. And what I mean by that, typically when you practice, you're practicing the same car that's about to qualify and go race. But here you practice on Friday. They don't inspect the cars until Saturday morning before qualifying. So all of the adjustments and spring and shock changes and different things, you get to play with the whole race car this week.
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah, it's unusual, but I know we as teams appreciate it on especially a big race like this. I mean, Indy is on everybody's calendar as one. They circle that would love to win. It's one of the I think the biggest races we go to. Just from a personal standpoint, everyone wants to win there. So yeah, to get the chance to practice a little more, actually make some changes to the car, change springs out if we need to, and adjust some settings. It's important, to be able to do that and feel like you're getting, the chance to do everything you can to put the best car out on track.
It has that big time feel.
Yeah.
And it has for decades, right?
Yep.
Every time I go to Indianapolis, it just feels different.
Yeah. There's certain tracks that have that feel, and Indy for sure is one of them. Yeah.
That's really cool. We've talked about this before. I've known Chris since he was a kid. He was racing Legends cars with us here in Texas, and he was always just kind of a quiet kid like he is now. But the thing I find most amusing is all of a sudden this quiet kid will occasionally share some of the crazy things he does with us on social media out at his place. So he's not afraid to take four-wheelers or anything else anywhere. Does the crew chief in you ever get nervous or just not want to know about those things?
I usually don't know about it until after it's over, which is probably best. I see the things that get posted, and it's like, oh, he did that. When you see him taking a four-wheeler across a pond and some things like that, it's
you don't try to dissuade him from doing that.
I mean,
no.
What's the point, right? I mean, it's.
Yeah, you don't call ahead of time and say, "Let me know, I'll come join you." I mean,
yeah. I mean, maybe that's like, I need to bring that up. Hey, at least let me show up and bring a camera. It's like, he posted anyway, but still, it'd be fun to be there and watch some of it anyway.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. Just the communication, some of the things that we don't ever see. How important is it? Again, both you and Chris have seen the most success in your careers together as a crew chief and driver combination, which has just been fantastic, especially over the last few years. So how much do your personalities click, and how much does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're both pretty calm for the most part. So, I mean, it's always, I always find that helpful just because communicating with somebody that's staying calm and is able to talk about details and specifics is a lot more useful to me than when some of the drivers, obviously you hear some drivers in the cars and they're not always really calm, and there's some that I've worked with that have been kind of like that. So it's I just appreciate getting useful information, and it helps us out so much more, the team, in terms of making adjustments and trying to get the car right, do things like that. And it's also, I think it just goes to kind of his demeanor in the car. I can always trust him to take care of it. He's going to do the right things. He's going to not put himself in a bad spot. And that's part of the consistency you see from him is, a race like the other day at Dover. It's easy to get frustrated, get yourself in a bad spot, trying to force an issue that isn't going to work, but he's not going to do that. And then we find ourselves in a spot at the end where we're actually able to make something out of the day, and we're there in a position to be able to do it. And he's taken care of the car with what he's had to be able to get us there. So those are the things that you get with with a driver like Chris.
Generally speaking, what does he want in the race car?
Speed.
No, of course. Goes without saying.
Fast car.
Does he want a loose race car?
It turns the middle great and has great drive off, and he's generally
anything different, from Chris to say any other driver that you've worked with.
He typically, I guess, if there's one area that we'll get in trouble sometimes, like he typically wants to be on the freer side.
Mm-hmm.
And in practice, like that'll make practice speed. A lot of times will make for a good qualifying speed, but sometimes you get into the race and you'll get in trouble just being on the free side. A lot of times, a lot of tracks we go to, the balance migration is to free up throughout a run. So you get if you start off too free, then it gets you in trouble on a longer run. So I'd say if anything, that sometimes we will run into that. Our balance offset, to the others is, we're usually a little bit freer. We kind of look at that every week, and if we're a little bit freer than Brad, then it's like, okay, we're in a good spot. We're able to kind of check off against our teammates with things like that. But that's probably the one thing that stands out the most.
Okay, other than speed, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
He wants that.
Nobody else asked for that, right?
Yeah, and they're never greedy, right?
Right.
It's fine. What's it like? You've been at RFK for a while. I mean, you've seen the evolution from just Roush Fenway to Roush Fenway Keselowski, and work with a handful of drivers and things like that. On the inside for you, what's the transition been like, and especially even this year, growing with the third team as well?
Yeah, it's. From anyone that was here, 10 or 15 years ago or more, it's quite a bit different. I think in a lot of good ways, just, we're focused more on, I guess, what I would call like just building fast cars, in terms of, I don't know, it's like if you go back in the past, there was a lot of production, and I think we were slow to react, to things and to making cars go faster because we just kind of had the machine going. And now, with this style of racing, these cars, I think we're able to, to be a little more focused on making sure, each car is right, the details are there on the cars. And I think, it's just, we've really focused on getting the right tools, better tools to help us out, not only in building the fast cars, but also in the simulation, the engineering side. So I just feel like, the focus is in the right areas now. And it's, I think it's showing just, performance that we've had here. The last few years, we're obviously not where we want to be yet, but we've certainly taken a step up, in the garage itself in terms of our performance and where we stack up now.
We have all these announcements coming up when it comes to schedules and all of that, even looking further ahead. Chicagoland Speedway being back on another intermediate oval, getting to race in San Diego for the first time and things like that. I know you're focused on the now, but, when you start to sort of look ahead in the sport and some of the fun places or different things that we might go see or new challenges for you, what do you think about, Scott?
I definitely like the variety. I think, going into Chicago, like the Chicago street course, I think, there was a little bit of skepticism at first about what's this going to be like, but I'm almost disappointed now that we're not going back because it actually was a really, really cool event. Just being in a downtown setting like that and just the whole thing, it was actually a good racetrack, in terms of being able to pass and do things, and it was unique. So I'm looking forward to San Diego, I guess, for the same reasons. It's a different setting, a different experience. If they have the success, in the field that we had at Chicago, I think it'll be great.
And what's wrong with going to San Diego?
Yeah, I mean that's the other part. Southern California, San Diego. I mean it's that part itself is going to be kind of cool. I've never been out there, to that far south in California, so that'll be kind of cool.
It is pretty, and the weather's pretty nice.
Yes, it is. That'll be really nice, and let's hope that holds true this weekend at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yes, let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah.
We got wet in Dover, Brad. It rained very briefly, but man, did it rain.
There's a lot of rain in a short amount of time.
Yeah, wasn't it crazy, though? Like, as quick as it got here, it rained, completely soaked everything.
Yep.
And it wasn't like the rain tapered off. It seemed like it just stopped.
Yeah.
the next thing you know, I mean, within 20 minutes, you're starting to see the track drying on its own. This actually happened in Indy one time about 10 or 15 years ago. I remember we were back to racing in like 45 minutes. It was crazy, but I mean, we don't get to experience that often, do we, Scott? Where all of a sudden it rains, and just when you're wondering if it's going to get dark too soon, all of a sudden we're going back to racing, within 90 minutes or less.
Yeah. I mean, I was skeptical when that much rain came in. I was like, oh, it's there's water running down the track. It's like, oh, this is going to be it. And then as soon as it stopped and the sun's out, and you're like, well, okay, it's drying up pretty quick. And then they fire up the jet dryers, and it's like, oh, all right, we might get this to happen. And yeah, I mean, it really wasn't like you're saying an hour and a half maybe, and we were back at it. It's like, that was pretty quick. You don't see that. You don't see that very often.
That's unofficial, the hour and a half. I didn't look at the actual race transcript. It may have been less than that. But that's what it felt like anyways. I will say the racetrack dried a lot quicker than my clothing did because I was still wet on the way home.
Yeah, we were all soaked.
Yeah, I'll bet. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. Truly wish you the best of luck, first and foremost this weekend at Indy. But beyond that, a run into the playoffs, and then we definitely hope to see you go deep into the postseason as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Big thanks to Scott Graves. Big thanks to Brian Keselowski. Mike Massaro, it's always fun hanging out with you as well.
My pleasure, Brad. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, for Mike, for Scott, for Brian, for everyone, my name is Brad Gillie. Thank you so much for tuning in to Backstretch Banter here with RFK.